Bobby Fischer. To a lot of people, he was simply the greatest chess player who ever lived. He was a national hero, the guy who single-handedly took down the entire Soviet chess empire. But he was also a fugitive, an exile, who died a wanted man in the very country that once threw parades for him. It's an absolutely incredible story of triumph and, well, a really deep, troubling tragedy.
Okay, so let's get right into it, because the question we're tackling here is a big one. How on earth did a simple game on a 64-square board, come to symbolize the entire Cold War? And more than that, how did the winner go from being this all-American icon to basically a man without a country?
To really get Bobby Fischer, you first have to understand the world he was walking into. See, this was never just about moving pieces on a board. Oh no, this was about ideology.
Think about the Cold War for a second. The US and the Soviet Union, they were competing in everything. The space race, the Olympics, you name it. And chess? Well, chess was right up there. It was seen as this ultimate test of intellectual strength, kind of like a proxy war fought with minds instead of missiles.
And get this, for 24 years straight, the Soviet Union had an iron grip on the world of chess. Since 1948, every single world champion had been a Soviet player. They didn't just play the game, they completely dominated it. And for them, that was a huge point of national pride and, frankly, some pretty powerful propaganda.
And this right here just lays out the clash of ideals perfectly. On one side, you had the Soviet chess machine, this massive state-sponsored system built from the ground up to churn out champions. And on the other side, the American way, the lone genius, the individual challenger, the ultimate cultural underdog.
And that underdog, well, that was Robert James Fischer, a prodigy from Brooklyn who became the youngest grandmaster in history at just 15 years old. He was brilliant, he was eccentric, and he played with this aggressive, creative style that just shattered the rigid, scientific way the Soviets approached the game. He was America's one big shot at breaking their stranglehold.
Which of course brings us to the main event, the 1972 World Chess Championship in Reykjavik, Iceland. In this corner, the challenger, Bobby Fischer, and in the other, the reigning champion from the USSR, Boris Spassky. The whole world was calling it the match of the century.
So the match kicks off in July, and it goes on for almost 2 months. And I'm telling you, the entire world was captivated. The games were so tense, packed with drama and psychological warfare. And then, on September 1st, the unthinkable happened. Bobby Fischer won.
But here's the thing you have to understand. This was so much more than a chess title. For Americans, Fischer's victory was a win for individualism over the collective. It was this huge soft power triumph that felt like it proved a lone American genius could, in fact, take down the entire Soviet system.
And back home, oh man, the reaction was just explosive. His win kicked off this cultural phenomenon that everyone started calling the Fischer boom. All of a sudden, America was completely obsessed with chess. The impact was just staggering. I mean, for the first time ever, chess matches were being broadcast on primetime TV. Fischer was on the cover of magazines, he was on talk shows, he was a full-blown cultural icon. And get this, membership in the U.S. Chess Federation literally doubled, almost overnight. He had made chess cool. So he's a national hero, right? He's the face of American intellectual power. He had reached the absolute summit of his world. So, the big question is, what happened next? I mean, where did he go? Because this is where the story takes a hard turn. The second act of Fischer's life is just a world away from the first. The same guy who was once celebrated by the US would pretty soon find himself in a direct showdown with its government, a fight that would turn him into a complete outcast. Okay, so here's how it went down. First, in 1975, he just forfeited his title. He refused to defend it because of some disagreements over the rules. Then, poof, he disappears for almost 20 years. Then, in 1992, he suddenly resurfaces for a rematch against Spassky in Yugoslavia. The problem? Yugoslavia was under strict U.S. sanctions. The government warned him, don't play. He ignored them, and an arrest warrant was issued. Just like that, Bobby Fischer became a fugitive.
So what did that really mean? Well, once that warrant was active, Fischer could never safely go back to the United States. He became an émigré, someone who's forced to live outside their own country for political reasons. The national hero was now, officially, in exile.
For more than a decade, he lived abroad, always looking over his shoulder.
Then, in 2004, he gets arrested in Japan because his U.S. passport had been revoked. It looked like he was finally going to be sent back to the States. But then, in this really poetic twist, Iceland, the very country where he had his greatest victory, stepped in and granted him citizenship. It gave him a safe haven, and he lived there until he died in 2008.
So when you look back at his life, what do you see? It's just a life of incredible, unbelievable contradictions. A man's legacy is so much more complicated than just the moves he made on a chessboard.
And look, we can't talk about his legacy without getting into the really dark stuff. In his later years, Fischer became infamous for spewing these hateful, anti-American and anti-Semitic views that just completely destroyed his reputation. He actually praised the 9/11 attacks and denied the Holocaust. It alienated him from pretty much everyone, including the chess world he once ruled. Which leaves us with this final, maybe unanswerable question. Was he a tormented genius who defeated an empire? Or was he a pariah totally consumed by his own demons? In the end, maybe the most complex move Bobby Fischer ever made was leaving behind a legacy that forces us, even today, to grapple with both.